Hi, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to talk about master detail pages and how we deal with those with a statically generated website. So the sorts of pages that we are talking about are these kinds of pages where you have some kind of collection or list on a page, and you can click on an item in that list and it takes you off to a more detailed page about that individual item. So if you want to find out about this, then let's dive in. So here we are back in Visual Studio with our site running, and what we're focusing on is building out this page so that we can have a list of team members, and we can click on an individual team member and go in and see their individual details. So the first thing we need to do is go to the pages section, and this page is currently being served by this particular page, which, as you can see, is using our default layout and just has the header in it. So the first thing that we need to do is create a new folder in here, and we're going to name that the same as the URL that we're using. So at the moment this goes to my team, so if we use that folder name and we create an index.vue in there, then when someone goes to the my team URL, it will actually render the index.vue page. So we can do our usual. In fact, we can copy everything out of the my team into the index page for now, and then we can get rid of the my team page because it's now going to go here. And this is complaining about it's the ESLint complaining about the fact that index should always be a multiple part name. So what we're going to do is we are going to go and turn that rule off, because I think it's a stupid rule in my opinion. So we're going to go and copy some code into the ESLint file. So we're going to add a rule into the ESLint file to for the multi-word component name rule. We're going to ignore that rule if the file is called index. So once we save that and the site refreshes, then that error goes away and we get our page back again. So we now need some content as well. So if you remember from our previous video, we used the actual root. So the same as the contact us, we have a corresponding markdown file in the content. So we can do exactly the same here. We can add a new file here called my team markdown. And of course, this isn't going to do anything just yet, but we can save that. So we're creating the title of my team. We're giving it a header of my team. So once we start picking up this file, then that's what the content will be. So if we go back to team page, if you remember, we actually have to have a special Nuxt content element in there that goes and gets that content from our Vuex store. If this is making no sense to you whatsoever, then most of this was done in the previous video, so by all means go back and check that one out. But now when I save this will refresh and we get the content. So with that done, we can go and add some content for our team members. So the way that we're going to do this is we create a folder that contains our team members, and within that folder we're just going to create a couple of files for the actual team members themselves. So this is the markdown that's going to contain the content for each of our team members, so all of their details like their name, their job title, etc. So let's just create these files, and again we've got some front matter, so some metadata about her. So the order ID basically dictates where she appears in the list, so we'll get to that, we'll come back to that. The name is obviously her name, her job title is obviously her job title. There's a reference to an image that we can go and pick up so that we can see what she looks like. The title is obviously what came from, is in all of our markdown pages. So the title gets rendered up on the title area of the browser, and the description is to do with the SEO, so that we get some SEO description put into the page so that the search engines can do this. Then we've got our markdown, so we've got a nice header and something about Jane. So we'll do the same for Steve as well. So Steve comes second in the order because he's a lowly developer, obviously. But other than that, the rest of the information is pretty much the same. So we have the same information across all of our team members, and then we can have an individual bio in the markdown file for each one. So let's save those, and we can close those out. We can get rid of our ESLint file as well now. With that in place, we can go back to our team index, and we need to actually go and get the information from the content. So the same way that we do it for in our layout template, we have a fetch method. The fetch method populates a members variable on this particular page, and it gets that from the content folder and team members. If you remember, that's the folder. So it's going to iterate through every markdown file that's in the team members. We're going to sort this by the order ID, so this is where that front matter comes in. So we're asking the Nuxt content engine to sort it by order ID, and then we're asking it to only return us from that matter the name, the slug, which we'll come back to, the image, and the job title, and then we go and fetch that. So we can also then expose that information to the page, and we do that with the data method. So we say that we want to return a members object as part of this component up to the template area. So with that in place, that will save and reformat. Nothing will change over here, but if we actually go and change the template so that after our boilerplate content, we have a div that's just iterating through the members, and it's using the slug that's on each member, and all we're going to output is the actual content of each member. So this is basically a for each loop in Vue terms, and we're just going to put that inside a div for each member. So we need to put this inside a div as well, because we can only have one root element inside a Nuxt template. So let's go and clean that up, and when we save that, now we can see that we are iterating and we get Jane Doe, and that's the slug for Jane Doe, and we can see the name, the title, and all the rest of it, and then we get Steve Smith information. So we are iterating through each of those markdown files and pulling out the information that we need to actually render, that we're going to need to in this template to render that particular team member. So this is always a good way to see what properties are available to you before you go and do your markup. So with that in place, we can go and add these images. So there's a couple of images there for both of them, and the place that we are going to add the images is in the assets folder. So we are going to create a new folder in there called images, which is where we will store all of our images, and we'll create a new folder in that folder called team, and that's where we will place our images for our team. So I've got a couple of images already prepared, so I'm just going to paste those in and come back over here, refresh that, and those are nicely in there, so we can reference those. We can change the markup that we've got in the team. Instead of showing member, let's just change this and then we'll talk through it. So what we're changing it for is, for each team member we're going to have a Nuxt link, and remember, a Nuxt link is basically an anchor tag. It renders out as an anchor tag, and the page it navigates to is dictated by the to attribute, and more specifically the value of the name property. We specify a value of my team slug, which means Nuxt will try to find a page in the pages folder, then the my team folder, then a page called _slug.vue. The underscore in the page name is converted to a hyphen by Nuxt for navigation purposes. So we'll create a _slug.vue in a little while. The params attribute allows us to pass additional data as part of the Nuxt routing mechanism. Here we add to the slug or URL of the page, and we add on the value of the slug value from the member content variable. We can see that the slug is set to a value of Jane Doe. As such, the value of Jane Doe will be appended to the my team URL. We then specify an image, and we reference across to assets images team, which is the new folder that we created, and then member image. So we're looking for Jane Doe or Steve Smith, which is exactly what we copied into those two image files, or that image folder. We've got a nice alternative piece of text that we can put in using the member name, so that's good for our area tags that we need. So for screen readers and those sorts of things, that's a good practice to put in place. We can then show the member name, and we also show the member's job title underneath that. So we need a little bit of styling underneath this as well. So I'm just going to go and copy some styles in. So this is just styling up the rest of it. So if we save that and let that refresh, what we see is a nicely formatted team list where we're iterating over the content, pulling out the content from those markdown files with our name and the job title, and it's ordered correctly according to those markdown files. So if I was to go back and change Jane to say 5 and save that, then it refreshes and Jane comes after Steve because her order is later in the list. But obviously we can't have that because team leaders always have to come first. They're more important than anybody else, obviously, certainly more important than a developer. We can now create the page that will be called to show the member detail. As mentioned earlier, we set a value of my team slug in the Nuxt link to attribute. So we create a file called _slug.vue in the my team folder. In here we can just do some boilerplate bits and pieces. So we are pulling our page content as we normally would do. And we've also got a link back to the My Team page. So what we should see, or what we're hoping to get to, is when we click on Jane Doe, we see the information about Jane Doe with a backlink underneath it. So if we just refresh that, then we can see at the bottom there, the link that we're going to get is My Team/Jane Doe, which looks good. So if we actually click on Jane, it's actually broken. And we also in here need to change this so that we use the same layout that we're using everywhere else. So we need to do some work in our default layout. So let's go and just remind ourselves what we're doing here. So every time the navigation changes, we're running this run navigation actions, and we try to get the page content from this and the root and the name. So in that case, this is My Team/Jane Doe, which obviously doesn't exist up here. What we need to do is have team members/Jane Doe. So we need to make just a little tweak to this particular piece of code. So we're going to change this so that we actually interrogate the root name, and if it's My Team Slug, which equates to My Team -slug, so the underscore gets changed to a hyphen, then that means we've gone to this particular view. So then what we're going to do is set up a content root variable local to this method, and we're going to set that to team members if that's the actual view that we're going. So we're changing the route where we're going to go and look for content, and then we set up the params to be the rest of the actual URL. So it would be the Jane Doe or Steve Smith element that would go into this params. If it's not that particular view that we're trying to get to, then we just carry on as we were, and we use content root, and we use an empty parameters. So we then change just this when we're getting the content to pass the additional parameters in, and Nuxt content basically does the rest for us. So it works out that it should go to team members and Jane Doe using the parameters. And that's what we're going to return as our main page content. So, and just as an aside, I notice that we've got replace there. That should be replace all, so that if we're defaulting if we don't find any page content, we should be replacing all hyphens to spaces so that we get a nice team name, page name up here rather. So I'm just going to fix that while we're here as well. And when we save that, when this refreshes, we can see that we now get our Jane Doe page as we would expect. And we can go back and we get the team list. We can click on Steve and we get Steve's page. So that's all working as we would expect and hope. So just a little bit of tidy up now then. What we want to actually show is the team members image again, but slightly bigger this time. And again, we've got exactly the same as we had before with the area tag, the alt tag for the image, and a bit of styling in there as well required. So just a tiny bit just to tidy it up, make it look a bit prettier. And when we now save that, we get a nice image of Steve and some nice styling, and the same when we go in on Jane's page, we get Jane as well. Incidentally, I just want to point out that for those of you that are following along, don't forget that we can obviously commit all these changes. So into our Git repository. And we can push that up And if we come over to our Azure extension, we can drill down into that and we can go straight to our site. And although at the moment, so if I go to main page, we can see that that's as we would expect. But if I go to the team, that's not quite refreshed yet. So once that action inside GitHub kicks off and builds, then this will obviously refresh. We can see in the Azure extension that we've got our actions here, and we can see our action there waiting to run, or running as we speak. So once that goes green, we should be able to refresh the page and we'll see exactly those same changes that we had locally being deployed up into the cloud so that it's on our website and live. So that's now gone green. So the job has run successfully. We've got a nice green tick against it. And so if I come over to the live site, I can refresh the team page and we can see that we've got our team pages that are live, and we can drill into those as we would expect. So we've added team pages to our website, and that's all working. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed that and you're finding these useful, then please like and subscribe, because that tells me that these are of use to people. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.